So yesterday, Trump spoke to the United Nations and he said, you're ruining your countries with all of this illegal immigration. He was directing that at Europe in particular. And he's not wrong. But I think the reason why he thinks they're ruining their countries with illegal immigration is wrong and misguided. But first, let's hear exactly what the horse said right from the horse's mouth.
Not only is the UN not solving the problems it should, too often, it's actually creating new problems for us to solve. The best example is the number one political issue of our time, the crisis of uncontrolled migration. It's uncontrolled. Your countries are being ruined. The United Nations is funding an assault on Western countries and their borders. In 2024, the UN budgeted $372 million in cash assistance to support an estimated 624,000 migrants journeying into the United States. Think of that. The UN is supporting people that are illegally coming into the United States, and then we have to get them out. The UN also provided food, shelter, transportation, and debit cards to illegal aliens. Can you believe that? On the way to infiltrate our southern border. Millions of people came through that southern border. Just a year ago, millions and millions of people were pouring in, 25 million altogether over the 4 years of the incompetent Biden administration. And now we have it stopped, totally stopped. In fact, they're not even coming anymore because they know they can't get through. But what took place is totally unacceptable. The UN is supposed to stop invasions, not create them and not finance them.
Did you know that most methylene blue being sold online is the same grade used in fish tanks? Watch out for low-quality bottles that are untested for heavy metals and made overseas. You can trust the wellness company's Recharge, a doctor-formulated supplement combining powdered methylene blue with NAD+ and PQQ. This methylene blue is USP grade, ensuring top-tier purity for maximum safety and effectiveness. This is not the sketchy stuff you'll find on Amazon. Recharge is formulated with research-backed ingredients to optimize brain function and cellular repair while supporting clean, lasting energy. Tap into cognitive and metabolic support that helps you stay energized, focused, and resilient all day long. Choose a trusted formula made for your body, not for fish tanks. Feel the difference with enhanced mental clarity, sustained energy, sharper focus, and protection against cognitive decline. And no, it won't turn your tongue blue. So head to twc.health/Kim and use code Kim to get 15% off plus free shipping. Again, that's twc.health/Kim and use code Kim to get 15% off plus free shipping. Who's doing the creation and the financing? Let's actually take a look at a graph. This is the illegal immigration that has flooded into Europe. This was from 2024. Of course, we don't have this year's stats just yet, but from last year, if you look at this, this is illegal immigration only, so not legal immigration, but illegal immigration, and the country of origin of the people that have illegally flooded into Europe. Now, in the United States, this graph looks different because most of ours come from Latin America, but looking at Europe, look at this. Number 1, Syria. Number 2, Afghanistan. Number 3, Mali. Then you have Bangladesh, then Ukraine, Egypt, Algeria, Senegal, Morocco, Turkey, Tunisia, Guinea, Pakistan. Let me see if we can remove this. Eritrea and Sudan. Okay, so the number one and the number, look at number 1 is Syria and Afghanistan. I wonder what caused all of the immigrants to flee Syria and Afghanistan. And even looking further on this list, Mali. Okay, so I think it's obvious with Syria and Afghanistan, right? So Afghanistan, the U.S. waged war in Afghanistan. We roped all the Europeans along. And this is why I'm saying it is their fault. It is the Europeans' fault for going along with all of the regime changes the United States wants to implement, with all of the wars the United States wants to get into. Europe is also at fault. This is not just the United States and our warmongering ways. It is the fact that NATO, Europe, goes along with every single one, even though it is completely against the wishes of their populations. They don't care what their populations want. They go against what their populations desire. They go against what is in the best interest of their people, and they go along with the United States warmongering And the U.S., of course, doesn't have to bear the brunt of all of these because the Syrians, the Afghanis, all of them, they're going to flood into Europe because it's easier to get there. They're not coming all the way to the United States, even though, yes, in the United States, we've had to absorb a lot of refugees as well. Wars and conflicts and bombing and regime change, all of that creates refugees. Most people want to stay in their homes. Most people are not interested in going to some foreign land where they don't speak the language, where people are bigoted towards them, don't really want them there. You know, people aren't super keen on packing their bags and going to do that. They do it for a reason. And this is pretty obvious when you look at this chart. Syria and Afghanistan, the number one and number two. Well, Syria, we've been funding and attempting a regime change against Assad for over a decade. And this is what you get. You get a ton of Syrian refugees when you create civil war, when you back a civil war, when you attempt a regime change, rather than calling for peace, rather than working for peace. We instead armed the resistance and kept telling them to fight, just like we're doing in Ukraine. Fight, fight, fight. And what did that do? That flooded millions of immigrants into Europe in particular. Germany had to absorb 1 million Syrians, and thousands more keep coming every single year. Afghanistan, do I really need to explain why? Afghanistan has resulted in a bunch of refugees fleeing war causes. I mean, if you look back at past years, Iraq was at the top of this list because of the war in Iraq. Now, Mali, this one's interesting. You might wonder, why are people fleeing Mali? Well, guess why? ISIS. Yeah, ISIS has infiltrated and found its way into Mali. Now, who created ISIS? Oh, gee, I wonder who created ISIS. So the West is responsible for the top 3 countries right here that are flooding into Europe. And Libya at one point was on this list. I wonder what caused all of the people to flee Libya and flood into Europe. Oh, that's right. It was the bayoneting, essentially, of Gaddafi, right? That's how he was murdered. So we've got, now Bangladesh, you're going to end up with refugees. People, no matter what you do, you can try to stop all of the conflicts in the world. There's going to be conflicts that rise up. There's going to be famines and droughts and a variety of different things that are going to cause people to want to flee. But you can certainly not contribute to what is the natural sort of order of things. You can do what you can to mitigate. And here, the United States is really at the top of the list for the top 5 countries. I mean, Syria, Afghan, and Europe, because Europe keeps going along with this. So I don't want to absolve the European countries and their leadership of wrongdoing and facilitating, because they absolutely have, by going along with every single war and regime change. But Syria and Afghanistan, Mali is because of ISIS, and we created ISIS, and ISIS has now spread its way into Africa. It's kind of going for low-hanging fruit. Well, in reality, there's a big thinking that the U.S. has been pushing ISIS into Africa in order to stop the Chinese Belt and Road Initiative. So in order to hinder the Chinese and their expansion into Africa, the United States has allowed and even facilitated and helped radicalization grow throughout Africa. Because we've been saying for a long time, how dare China go in there and actually invest in these African countries? Africa's making a big mistake. The African countries are making a big mistake. China's coming in and China's just using them. And then suddenly, after China starts putting a big investment into Africa, suddenly ISIS and ISIS adjacent organizations find their way in Africa. So Mali is because of ISIS. Then Bangladesh, that is its own issue with the Rohingyas on its own. But Ukraine, so you've got so the top 5, 4 out of 5. And to be honest with you, I don't know enough about Bangladesh. Some of you watching might say, well, actually, the U.S. is responsible for Bangladesh, too. It wouldn't shock me. I just don't know anything about that, so I can't say. But I do know the United States is directly or indirectly responsible for Syria, Afghanistan, Mali, and Ukraine, for sure. So that's the top 5 illegal immigration going into Europe. And Trump wants to blame relaxed policies. What is he blaming it on? He's blaming it on essentially saying that they funded support systems for migrants, that they undermined their national borders and sovereignty, and that it was all their fault. When in reality, all of we're flooding them with immigrants, and it gets worse. And then you've got the rest on this list: Egypt, Algeria, Senegal, Morocco, Turkey, Tunisia, Guinea, Pakistan, Eritrea, Sudan. The United States is also in Sudan. But we are a huge cause of illegal migration into Europe. And that that's why it's so odd to me why so many in the West, like Donald Trump, those who are in the MAGA movement, are railing Europe for letting all of these refugees into their nations, which really they're not letting. Those are illegals that are coming in and crossing the border, and they're not supposed to be. And they're saying, oh, how dare you, you guys are doing the wrong thing for your people. But it's the United States that is helping and aiding and abetting this refugee crisis. And then on top of it, the United States turns to Europe and says, how dare you recognize a Palestinian state? I just cannot get over this because of how ludicrous the logic is, because there's no logic in this. To say, how dare you want to create a state for Palestinians where Palestinians would live in the state of Palestine, right? I mean, if you carve out a country for Palestine, then you would say to all the Palestinian people, well, you go and you live in your country because there's now a country of Palestine. So that's where you go live. But you got all these people who are super against immigration, and especially Arab, Muslim immigration, Islamic immigration. And they're the ones saying, except we can't have a Palestinian state. So where do you expect these 7 million Palestinians to go? Oh, their grand plan is to carve them up into like 50,000 to 100,000 chunks of people and spread them all around the world. The same people, the very same people who are sitting there telling us that immigration, especially Islamic immigration, is evil and bad and wrong, and people shouldn't allow it. These are the same people saying, except we have to help the Jews clear out all these Arabs. And of course, we're going to clear out these Arabs where? Well, I mean, obviously, we're going to have to take them. So here's Ursula von der Leyen. So here's Ursula von der Leyen, and she's talking about Palestine. And she actually says that they want to set up a Palestinian donor group so that there could be a future Palestinian state that they will help rebuild. That basically this money would go towards economically helping Palestine and helping them reconstruct Palestine. Now, a lot of, what do you see online? You see all these people who are very much against immigration, especially Islamic immigration, saying, how dare they side with the terrorists? They're speaking out of both sides of their mouths. What do you want? Do you want the Islamic refugees? Do you want the Arabs, the Muslims to stay in the Middle East, or do you or not? Which one is it? You can't have both. So if you want them to stay, then stop waging wars on behalf of Israel or on behalf of resources or war, whatever it is, whatever you think the reason is for waging all these wars all over there. Stop doing that and stop actually actively advocating to ethnically cleanse 7 million people off of land, because they're going to have to go somewhere, someplace. And guess who should be responsible for taking them in? Quite frankly, Israel. I mean, if you're going to wage war, we do it all the time. We wage war in countries and we take in the refugees. Russia has absorbed millions of Ukrainians. So if you say, well, no, you don't have to take in the enemy. Well, Russia certainly did. Russia has taken in millions of Ukrainians at this point. So why can't Israel take in the Palestinians, or at least move the women and children, the Palestinians, over to the West Bank? They don't want to do that. Why? Because it's ethnic cleansing of the land. And so what do they want to do with all the people? They want to move them to Europe. That's what they want to do. Well, at least here's Ursula von der Leyen saying, actually, we want to rebuild Palestine. And and the irony is of these Europeans is that they're the ones saying, wow, it's really bigoted and it's actually against the law. And you can't even put on social media, you don't want the immigrants here in Europe. Otherwise, we're going to visit your home and maybe you even might get arrested. It's those same Europeans who are saying, don't be a bigot. You're not allowed to say anything. You're not allowed to speak up. You're not allowed to say, hey, I think we have an immigration problem. You're not allowed to do that. But then they're saying, but we support Palestine. We support a Palestinian country. The people of Palestine should be able to stay in Palestine. Yes, that is actually correct. So both sides are kind of flipping. They're kind of flipping their own narratives without them realizing it. But here's Ursula saying, let's build a Palestine for Palestinians where Palestinians can stay.
Ladies and gentlemen, when the night is darkest, we must hold fast to our compass. And our compass is the two-state solution. October 7th has opened one of the darkest chapters in history. We all agree that the tragedy in Gaza must stop right now and all hostages released. But ending the war might not be enough if there is no pathway to peace, if the prospect of two states is no longer viable. And as we speak, the two-state solution is being undermined, and this cannot be, because the only realistic peace plan is based on two states, with a secure Israel, a viable Palestinian state, and the scourge of Hamas removed. Since the beginning of this war, Europe has been the lifeline of the Palestinian Authority. We have put together an unmatched and unprecedented financial package of 1.6 billion euros. But as the very survival of the Palestinian Authority is at stake, we must all do more. And this is why we will set up a Palestine donor group. Any future Palestinian state must be viable, also from the economic point of view. And this can be achieved also with the support of the Palestinians' neighbors. We Europeans will set up a dedicated instrument for Gaza's reconstruction in coordination with other donors' efforts. Gaza must be rebuilt, the Palestinian economy must be relaunched, and I invite all of you to join in the effort to make this happen. Of course, in the end, only the Israelis and the Palestinians can agree on the way forward. But the international community has so much to contribute. We can facilitate, we can rebuild, but most importantly, we can keep hope alive. Thank you very much.
Well, and we could keep Palestinians, all these Arab Islamic terrorists in the Middle East. That's where you want to keep them. Again, I just want to look at this graph again. I just want to, really kind of make this point here that the vast majority of illegal immigration coming into Europe is because of U.S. policies. And it's not just the war policies. I mean, here in the United States, the surges of migration from Latin America, from Venezuela, Cuba, Nicaragua, they're closely linked to U.S. economic sanctions and pressures and regime change, which have caused hardships and poverty in Latin America. And then they come flooding into, I just had a bit of a background change there. I always like to mix it up. Then they come flooding into the United States, and we sit here and we scream about it. Maybe the U.S. should just change its foreign policy entirely. Maybe the U.S. should change its foreign policy entirely and stop. Just the hypocrisy is stunning to me.
There is no Palestinian state, no matter how many papers they.
Okay, let's hear Marco Rubio, him talking about how he wants. I mean, basically, when you hear this, what you should be hearing is, we want refugees. We want Arab refugees in the United States because we want to continue to wage war. And then when we wage war with Iran, we want Iranian refugees. So we want Iranian refugees. We want Palestinian refugees to flood Europe, to flood the United States. This is what we're asking for. That's what we should be hearing when we're listening to little Marco Rubio.
There is no Palestinian state, no matter how many papers they put out. And the only time there'll ever be one is if there is a negotiation with Israel, which right now is impossible because they have a war going on with Hamas, a terrorist group that butchered over 2,000 people on October 7th, just almost 2 years ago. And so as long as that's going on, the whole thing is irrelevant. It's almost a vanity project for a couple of these world leaders who want to be relevant, but it really makes no difference. Now, I will say the impact it has had is it actually derailed, it made Hamas, talks that were going on, it made it even harder to get Hamas to enter into concessions that might have brought this to an end. And look, we think there's a window of opportunity right now to pursue it. The only leader in the world, really, that can sort of broker that or bring that together is President Trump. That's why every country in the region, and frankly, every country in the world, including many of those involved in this recognition effort, are begging the president to get involved in this issue.
Oh, are they? Okay. I mean, Donald Trump, when he brings people to the negotiation table, he allows them to get blown up. So I'm not sure if people are begging for negotiations to be taken part at the facilitation of the United States, considering the track record over the last few months. Get them together and blow them up. But look, we all know Israel doesn't want to do a deal. Israel's hell-bent on taking the land. They've made that very clear. Netanyahu's made that very clear. So from even Marco Rubio to be sitting here saying, no, we're going to come to an agreement, we're going to come to a deal. Netanyahu has said, we're doubling up our efforts to take the West Bank land, which is not where Hamas is, but to increase settlements, annex the place. We're going to take all of Gaza. And by the way, we need you people to take all of the refugees. And that is exactly what Israel is going to force onto Americans, force onto Europeans. And guess what? Our leadership will do it. And then when they do it, when the United States does it, when the United States facilitates it, turn around and blame the UN and blame Europe and say, wow, you people have an open border crisis problem. It's just, can we just get any dumber? And the problem is that we sit here and we believe it. I mean, we actually believe things that do not make any sense whatsoever logically when you actually start to think about them. And this is one of those things. So I will blame Europe. I do blame Europe. I'm not going to put Europe's problems squarely on the United States because Europe goes along with it. So if Europe was contesting the U.S. and contesting all the wars that the U.S. was starting in the Middle East and Ukraine, then I would say, yeah, Europe is just absorbing the brunt of U.S. decisions, but Europe goes along with every single decision. In particular, Ukraine, they're actually worse than the United States on it. Maybe not. I mean, we haven't been able to end that war. And so, of course, Ukrainians are still flooding into Europe. The difference is the Europeans are being more upfront and honest about it. They're saying, yeah, we want to continue to try to take down Putin and Russia. And the United States is kind of saying things like, well, we want to actually come to an agreement and we want to have some sort of peace, and then not actually getting to any peace and not actually doing what is necessary for that. So, it's kind of like a good cop, bad cop. I don't know. But Europe is to blame for all the immigration. They are ruining their own countries, for sure. Trump is right on that. They're just doing it because they're going along with U.S. and Israeli foreign policy to their own detriment and to the detriment of the European people. And here in the United States, we also feel the brunt of it, especially when it comes to Latin America and the policies the United States has. Here we are blowing up boats in Venezuela and trying to topple Maduro. And we don't think that there's going to be a whole flood of Venezuelans coming into America after it's pure chaos in Venezuela when their government topples. Do we not think that that will happen? Of course it will. And people want to say, well, we don't have to let that. Yeah, well, they'll come whether you like it or not. It'll be an invasion, just like you said. But that's because you invaded first. So, quid pro quo. Real insanity, just absolute insanity going on here. Thank you for watching this clip from the full Kim Iverson Show, which you can catch Monday through Friday, 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern at KimIversonShow.com. It is free for you to watch. Again, 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern, KimIversonShow.com. See you there.